What's up, everyone? Blake here. Welcome back to another episode of the Raw Food Lifestyle Podcast. Today, I have another amazing guest for you guys. We have Michael Siddall, aka the Abundant Yogi on Instagram. And Michael is a certified regenerative health practitioner and a certified yoga practitioner. And he has been plant-based for around 15 years. So we are going to have the delight of picking Michael's brain today. I can't wait to get in our conversation. But first and foremost, Michael, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here. And how are you doing today?
Pleasure, Blake. It's such an honor. Thanks to be here. It's a privilege as always, and it's great to actually, see your face and interact with you virtually now. At some point, we'll connect in real life, right? But such a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Michael. And yes, we've been chatting online quite a bit. Michael was one of the first, I suppose, like raw food sort of influencers that I started following because he's a yoga practitioner and a yoga teacher, and I am as well. And we were chatting a little bit before the show about our philosophies, and we share a lot in common. So I'm super excited to dig deeper into that and to get more of your philosophy on not just yoga, but the raw foods and the lifestyle in general. But I figured what we would do is first off, let us know about your origin story and what got you into this lifestyle in the first place.
Well, I think so I grew up in the 60s, right? So I'm a product of that era. I was born in 1956. We're talking, this is the 70th year around the planet for me, right?
You look
So,
amazing. My God, man.
so I
Yoga
grew up
work.
in an era where things, I thought I'd throw that in there. I thought, I grew in an era where things were changing. The whole music thing, the whole hippie thing, the lifestyle stuff, right? All of that. And I've always kind of had I don't know, kind of this quest about spirituality from a young age. And, I don't come from a religious background in that sense. Our household was not a religious place, but I was always very steeped in different religions and things like that. And, in my 20s, early 20s, got steered away from that and got into, you got to get a real job and, buckle down, cause, I had longer hair than this then. And, I was doing that whole lifestyle. And, that was part of the journey, but it wasn't, I woke up sometime in my early 30s and went, wow, you become everything you said you'd never be, and that was kind of the beginning for me of jumping back into a more authentic kind of journey for me. Right. And so that ended up leaving the corporate world, went into the yoga world full time. I've been in the yoga world full time for about 32 years. There was a natural progression for me in terms of moving into health and wellness as a category, right? Because it was just a natural extension of and I want to preface that part of the yoga practice, right? And I became plant-based, as you said in the intro, somewhere around 15 years ago. I'd been vegetarian since then. I haven't had red meat in 37, 38 years, you know. But I went on that journey, eliminated fish and, chicken and yada, yada, yada. Dairy, for me, cheese was a big thing, which it is for most people, right? That was the hardest one to give up.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
so that
I
led
hear
in,
you.
yeah, that led into this journey where later on in my yoga career, things started becoming more important in terms of the plant-based world. I began my plant-based journey simply from a a health standpoint. The whole thing about the animals wasn't really my focus at that time, but it has become a major focus of why I do what I do now. I don't believe, and this might be controversial for people, but I'm not sure how you can be in any sort of ascending yoga practice if you're killing things to survive yourself.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. And that's not to take away from anybody else in their practice, but I think that if you talk about compassion and forgiveness and these kind of things, if my partner Julie is an animal activist, if you've gone and you've seen these animals prior to going into the slaughterhouse and whatever, I mean, they're sentient beings. They know what's going on.
Absolutely. They definitely do. And I'm still pretty new into my plant-based journey. I was the same as you. I tapered down off of the heavier meats like long time ago. Like we're talking probably about 23 years ago when I first started caring about health and fitness. I looked into the alkaline diet, and they were saying the darker the meat, the more acidifying it is on your body. So, I probably had red meat a few times throughout those two, it's nearly 2.5 decades. But for the most part, it was like you said, it was chicken, fish, eggs. And then the past couple years, it was tapering down really into vegetarianism. Luckily, I wasn't too huge on the cheese, like thank God. But trust me, there's some other things that are still thorns in my side to this day, like over salting and everything like that I'm still working on. It's a work in progress. But it's only been since the beginning of 2025 that I've been fully plant-based. And just to give the audience a little context, you're in Canada, and we can talk more about that too. And I'm originally from Minnesota. And it seems like in the northern climates, they rely more heavily on animal products, for survival for during the winter time. At least in my culture from where in Minnesota.
Yeah, I think we've been sort of brainwashed about many, many, many things as we're all those of us who are kind of, moving in a certain direction are finding out, right? And it's not just recently, it's over a long period of time. I don't know if if certainly if you get up into, the Antarctic or the Arctic and, talking about Eskimos and whatever and that kind of thing, that's where they are, that's what they're eating, right? And so, but also they die very young. Their life expectancy is about 46. They massive heart attacks, yada, 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 right? So but that's what they do in their environment to survive, right? I'm not sure that I'm sorry. I'm absolutely sure that, eating meat and animal products wasn't what historically we were supposed to eat as a being. Our whole physical structure is not meant like that. And I know you know about Dr. Morris and other people. I don't know if you read any of Hotema's stuff.
Yes, Man's Higher Consciousness is one of my favorite books.
Right. So Hotema's premise is that we were all breatharians to begin with, right? Like, and that, there's been adaptations. Now, it's very interesting when people talk about adaptations, right? Because it can be a very positive thing, adaptations, and adaptations cannot necessarily be positive, right? So what we've done as a race in terms of adapting, I don't think necessarily has been, and we're going to talk about things probably in more general sense that I'm not sure they've been all that positive. Look where we're at. Right. Or, very simply the protein myth. I mean, oh my goodness, how many times, and then you're just begin this journey, like, and you're a fitness guy, right? So I'm sure you're going to get bombarded with, where do you get your protein? Right. Like it's the number one thing. Where'd you get your protein? And it's like, man, I can show you pictures of raw vegan bodybuilders who do 60 grams of protein a day and they're ripped, right? Too much protein, also a precursor to cancer. Nobody tells you all of that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so happy that you brought up Hilton Hotema. He's one of my favorite, I guess, hygienic writers. And I'm not sure that you would even clump him in as a natural hygienist. He's kind of on the fringe because he's bringing in more esoteric
Yeah.
wisdom with the
Yeah.
natural hygiene. And that's probably why I love his work so much. And like I said, I've only read his flagship book, The Man's Higher Consciousness, but he's got so many different books and I can't wait to dive deeper into them. I just have this long list of stuff I have to read and I'm just churning through it as much as I can.
He's a very interesting guy and a very interesting premise, right? He's not he's not in the category of, Shelton and those guys in terms of, natural hygiene or, that kind of stuff. I mean, but they're all kind of dancing on the same dance floor, so to speak, right? All of these things, because, I was listening to your show with Marcus. Marcus, is a dear friend of mine. You got into, the Hermetic, and the natural law and the five principles, and, as above, so below. All these things have been around for a long, long, long time, right? So in the yoga world, I'm also initiated Tantrika, right? So the practice that I primarily follow with respect to life, and I mean philosophically, is a tantric practice, which is basically everything is consciousness. Everything is consciousness, which is where this phrase actually, I don't want to say there was an origin story there, but I mean, they're all around the same time period, right? That's the whole premise. As above, so below. Consciousness as it is in its unmanifested state and consciousness in its unmanifested state. It's still consciousness. Everything is consciousness.
And that's actually something I've been contemplating a lot. I've come to this interesting, I don't want to say a crossroads, but I guess a milestone might be a better way to say it in my journey. It could be because I've got some fasting under my belt now, and that's really good for getting in touch with your spiritual side. So I wanted to ask you this, Michael. Listening to Brian Mirabella, and he was bringing up Yogananda, and when Yogananda passed in California, apparently his body did not start decomposing right away like a normal body would. It stayed intact. But Yogananda was a bit of a chub. He was kind of chubbier late in life, so you could imagine that maybe he wasn't following the natural hygienic principles and the mucusless principles. He probably had some mucoid plaque. So for the layperson, or for me even, it's like, you would imagine that he would have putrid stuff inside of him and that his body would start decaying just like anything else. But it didn't, because he had reached such a pristine state of consciousness. So that was kind of the conundrum that I came to in my own journey, in my own research, and using myself as a guinea pig. I'm like, so why am I trying so hard with the clean diet, with the fasting, with the hygienic principles, if I could just kind of put all that stuff on the wayside and just to try to develop my consciousness, and then in my conscious belief system hold that I am whole and healthy. So is there a way that you can kind of like get away with that, or do you have to do the physical and the mental?
Well, I think we're talking when you get into this, and because it's, I've had this thought myself. Okay. Like if you look at Indian spiritual leaders or gurus or whatever you want to talk about, or people who are renowned in terms of their spiritual background, right? Often you look and you go, well, that guy's not in very good shape, right? You know, but the way I would explain it, these guys they were manifested in this from birth, right? It's not something they grew into. This is, for lack of a better expression, they had how many soul reincarnations they had, whatever. They're just coming in. So it's like, it kind of doesn't matter what's going on around them. Or what they're even ingesting, I suppose, to some extent. They're just in such a different plane or different dimension than let's say you and I, right? That's our journey, right? In a sense, I mean, if you ask me, to describe where I'm going, my path is about ascension with respect to body, mind, and spirit, body, mind, and soul, right? And they're all intertwined. Now, can you get there? I think you can. Am I there? No, I'm not, right? It's a journey. But I think all the things you're talking about doing in terms of this bodysuit that we are wearing that houses this spirit, this soul, if I can use this analogy, right? The more you can keep that in the most optimum state, the more chance you have of optimizing this spirit, this frequency, this soul that is moving, which is actually moving you.
100%. I couldn't
Right.
agree more. I think
Yeah. With respect to Yogananda and these guys, this is a different space right now. Funnily enough, because I've been looking at this lately, and I think it's also kind of, this will touch you, I think, and stuff you've already looked at. If you look at Christ and different now different points of view, because people argue this, but Christ was part of a sect of the Essenes, which yada yada. This is primarily vegan culture, yada yada yada. So it was very important for him to have. Now, was this solely out of compassion? Was this solely out of what was there? Was this a practice? Was part of this practice also to keep one's physicality in a place of helping one ascend? I don't know, but it begs these questions, right? So I can only say in terms of the here and now, I think that it's important that what you do physically is certainly going to affect your mind. It's certainly going to affect your spirit, right? Your soul, and allowing you to speak from a more genuine place of who you truly are, a loving, compassionate, joyful being, right? If you look at any of these practices, any of these spiritual practices, where does consciousness reside physically? And their explanation of where it's not in your head, it's not in your mind, it's in your heart, right? How many of us think with our heart? Not many. Not many, right? And I'm including myself in this. Now, I don't know if you're aware of heart-brain coherence.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
This is that path. And they're discovering now the power of what you can do if you can be in this heart center, right? If you can actually think from this heart center, this is where the power of healing is really coming from. Like you can extend your telomeres, which, a lot of times for most people, I don't know if people understand, I'm not a scientist, but telomeres at the end of your DNA strands, and as they disappear, right? Your life becomes less vibrant. You end up passing away. Well, and they thought that that was never a renewable thing. They're now finding out it is. All right. And part of that is how you connect to your heart, what you put out there in terms of messagings of gratitude, caring, appreciation, love, right? Love is the answer to
Oh,
everything,
absolutely.
quite frankly. And it's simple all the way around. Love is the answer to absolutely everything. But, the hardest part is you got to learn to love yourself.
That is the hardest part. And I want to ask you this, Michael, and just for just a smidge of background on the heart brain coherence. Apparently, it's when there's a synchronicity, or there where your heart waves and your brain waves are kind of flowing rhythmically. I remember they in my yoga training we had a segment on this, the Heart Math Institute work, and they did a meditation with us to put us in that
Yep.
heart coherent state. And they even had a thing where they could measure it.
Yeah, yeah,
And
you can measure
one
it.
of the
Yeah.
ways that they measure it is your heart rate variability, which is the difference between your heartbeats. And just to make this really simple, if my heartbeat has exactly 1 second in between it of every heartbeat, that means I have a low heart rate variability. But if I have zero 0.7, zero 0.9, zero 0.8, 1, zero 0.6 seconds, then I have a higher degree of heart rate variability. And that's actually good. You don't want a strictly mechanical heartbeat. But anyway, that's how they measured it. But the meditation that we did was we had to think of the happiest moment in our lives. And we all typically were just like hugging our loved ones or something like that. And it just puts you into that state. And so you said loving yourself is kind of like the hardest thing, and that's so true, Michael. And I just wanted to ask, like, if we get to the point to where we're conscious enough to where we notice, hey, I'm not in that heart coherent state. I just had some kind of aggressive thoughts or some angry thoughts. Is the battle being aware of that, or is it more of how we then mitigate it after we slip up? And how do you personally navigate that?
Well, I think that if we're looking at how we're progressing, let's use that word, how we're progressing on this journey of standing in a better version of ourselves, understanding that's a combination of body, mind, and spirit. I think the first step you go along, well, first is that you go, hey, I think I need to start looking at myself in the world in a different way, right? So step number one. As you move along, I think step number two is you start to catch yourself faster in behaviors that you perhaps recognize aren't the most positive, right? Let's say anger, frustration, impatience, whatever it might be, right? You catch yourself, right? Like you're driving down the highway and, somebody cuts you off and, 20 years ago you would have, right? Yeah, but now you go, oh, okay. And you can stop and you can reboot. I think that's the first major step is you become more aware of just catching yourselves in the moment. And then it's honestly, I think about practice, and I think that's an ongoing thing. And I'm still developing in all of this, right? To me, it's a journey. And I'll use something that a teacher once told me. There's kind of three steps in a practice, right? There's the intellectual understanding of a practice. And I think this applies to anything, right? There's intellectual understanding of something. Then there's the practice of the practice. In other words, that you take that intellectual learning and you actually practice that. And then the real next place that's really interesting, it's the contemplation of the practice. What is this actually doing for me in this moment? And can I implement it? Because it's in the implementation of stuff that truth arises, right? Like another dear teacher of mine once said to me, everything that comes out of your mouth is a lie, right? And he wasn't speaking to me, he's speaking generally. And I thought, that's kind of really harsh, right? And then I thought about it and I thought, he's right. Because I could, Blake, I could say to you, Blake, I'm a great guy. Is that true or false? You don't know. You don't know, right? We're making suppositions. The only way you can know is if I kind of prove that to you over time through action, through implementation, through doing, right? And this is where I think that's the other step, is recognizing, stop talking, start doing, right? So I think that it's a continuum of things. And like anything in life, and I think all of these philosophies that I'm talking about can be shared in any aspect of life. It's not rocket science, but I think it's this continuum. Like you're moving on this continuum. People think change happens like this, and it doesn't, right? You want to see changes, start something, and a year later, look back and go, am I a different person? Are things different? Have things changed for me? And not externally. Have they changed for me on the inside? How I view things, how I view myself, how I interact with others, how I'm hoping to interact with others in a better way, right? Yeah. Then look a year later. 5 years from now, you're probably going to look back and go, wow, I thought I was on top of things 5 years ago, and look at where I'm at now.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't happen overnight. It's good to take those little snapshots and realize how far you've come. And I wanted to ask you, when you're talking about this practice and implementation and doing the work and kind of not talking about it but being about it sort of thing. I was what I was kind of coming to my mind is that, those moments where I find myself slipping and kind of getting into an impatient thought or an angry thought or something like that. And this is, I guess, what I wanted to ask you, because my, I guess, take on that now is that it's just my ego trying to protect myself somehow. It's like a defense mechanism or whatever built in my ego. And that the more that we dissolve into the unity consciousness, the less you have that need or that fear-based ego that's trying to protect you. Like if somebody cuts you off in traffic or somebody's dog runs at you barking and it scares you when you're running or something like that. That just happened today. And I was like, oh my God. And I, had these kind of negative thoughts towards these quote unquote idiots letting their dog almost bite me and stuff like that. And then afterwards, and I can't believe I'm telling you this right now, but I think it's going to help some people to understand, because I'm at the state of consciousness that where I'm now starting to understand and starting to realize what I'm doing. I'm like, man, I don't feel good that I had that thought. So is there another layer to it to where like you start then judging yourself because
I wouldn't
you
say
had that?
judging. Yeah, I wouldn't
Okay.
say judging. I would say maybe a different way to look at it would be observing, right? And I think that's sort of the key. If I go back to sort of the contemplation of stuff, now I'm thinking about this continuum, is that, fear is a mind killer, right? Frank Herbert wrote this, it's a famous line in his book, Dune, right? It's so true. And we live in a fear-based society. I mean, look what's gone on in the last 5 years. You know what I mean? We live in a fear-based society where people have lost, a sense of critical thinking for themselves and whatever. But not to get into that in maybe as we move along, but to talk about what you're talking about, is to recognize. So we have fear, right? Okay, so we have fear. It is an ego-based scenario. Generally, our ego. We need an ego to survive in this planet that we live in. Unfortunately, it is what it is. But understanding what the ego does to you is an important. And generally, ego is not a positive force, right? It's a force that creates fear. Fear is a big thing. Fear is a huge category that touches upon all sorts of things. I'm going to marry this with the concept of light and dark. Okay, you can't have one without the other, right? We live in there's a pulsation in life, right? And there's inhalation, exhalation, this, that, whatever, right? So what I'm suggesting, another way of observing it is, okay, fear came up. Can I sit in that? Can I actually sit in the dark? Can I sit in that dark? And what caused the fear? What is actually at the root of this fear? Right? Is it that I, you know, from childhood, or I'm not worthy, or this, or, whatever it might be, I'm not strong enough. I'm not all these things. Right. And we were all this. Our subconscious, unfortunately, was developed from the time we're 0 to 7. And these are things that are deeply ingrained in us. And fear is a big one. Right. And our parents did the best they could. I'm not ragging on our parents. Right. But if I'll use a personal example, my parents used to say to me all the time, you're not living up to your potential. Right. So
Yeah.
you can think of that. You can think that they probably thought that was a positive thing, right? But it also has another side, which is, well, I'm not good enough, right? I'm not worthy enough. You don't see me as being well. And that was something, I'm going to say from personal sense, that you still dig into, right? You still go into, how far deep can you go into this darkness? right? But that's where the light is found, right? If you go deep enough and you sit with it and you go, okay, that shocked me. I was afraid. Why? And then an answer will come up and you go, why was that? And then can you actually sit in it? Like even make it part of a meditation sense, sit in it and you go deeper. And that darkness becomes smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. And poof, it goes away. And I think that's an
Yeah,
ongoing practice. And that's also an aspect of the heart brain, heart coherence practice, heart harmony thing, right? That's where you then, in a place of being in this harmony, go into this place is, what is this? Right. And most spiritual practices talk about these things, right? You got to sit in the dark
yeah,
to really understand. That's the step to the freedom. And that's what I mean. When we're looking at ascension or becoming the best version of ourselves, what are we looking at? We're looking at being free, free of the shackles that are holding ourselves down with respect to being just a loving, compassionate, genuine, joyful person.
right, exactly. Is there a part of that? This might seem kind of like a basic question, but is there a part of that where and you touched on this a little bit already, Michael, where you were like, okay, we kind of live in a fear-based society and I can't control what my neighbors are doing. I can't control what the people on the road are doing and stuff. So would you have any sort of advice how to stay in that heart coherent state and stay in that state of love without getting triggered by this stuff that intellectually that they're basically violating natural law. They're violating your rights. They're not treating others how they would want to be treated and everything like that. How do you let all that go, ignore it, and not let it bother you because you're only hurting yourself if you allow that to shake you out of that heart coherent state. After that story where that dog kind of startled me and this lady wasn't paying attention and it scared me a bit, to be honest. I was like a little bit grumpy during my workout, and then this woman passed by this outdoor park where I was working out at, and she smiled at me and I smiled back and waved. As soon as that interaction happened, it like lifted my whole spirits up, and I was able to kind of forget about that altercation with the dog. So,
I,
do you have any advice on how to not let the external world shake you off your center?
well, I think part of it is just to be honest with ourselves and go, guess what? I'm going to get angry, right? There are going to be times when there's times I'm going to be angry. There's times when things are going to piss me off. There's times when I'm going to be upset. There's times when I'm going to look around the world and go, what the heck is going on? Or, I live in a country where I would tell you that most Canadians live their life in a fear-based state, right? And that's unfortunate, but which leads into something else. So remind me about this. It leads on something else in terms of a yoga thing. So I think, it's not that we're not going to have these emotions, right? It gets, again, how can we deal with them when they come up? And how can we kind of shorten life? So the Kabbalists, in Kabbalah, they talk about this, right? A lot in the sense of, and this is the aspect of the dark and light. So the light, you're born an enlightened being. You are light. You were born light. You are part of the creator. You're a co-creator, right? We all are, right? This goes in everything is consciousness. Whatever word you use for consciousness, creator, God, whatever, you're it. I've always been it, right? So you have the power to dispel the darkness. You do. You have the power to dispel the darkness. But darkness is a really powerful force, right? Because it's attached to our ego and it's attached to our mind. And it talks in the Kabbalist thing is go, recognize that, see it, and go, this is an opportunity, right? This is an opportunity to see it and go, I don't need this. I don't need this stuff. What am I doing to myself, right? And when you open that up, the light becomes brighter. I'm being very simplistic in this, and for any Kabbalists who are this, please forgive me for maybe bastardizing explanation of this, right? But it's true in all of these kind of practices is that it's in the recognition, like, I mean, can we sit down every day? I used to tell my yoga students this, they go, what's yoga about? And I say, go to the mirror, look at yourself in the mirror. Can you see the good, the bad, and the ugly? Because all three exist and they're always going to exist. It's at what part are you letting one dominate the other, right? I think there's a Native American saying that talks about this, about, what wolf are you going to feed? Oh,
I like
right.
that.
Are you going to feed the angry
Yeah.
wolf or are you going to feed the loving wolf? I'm being simplistic on this again, right? But yeah. So I think it's I think what we do when we're on this journey that you and I are on at the beginning is we judge ourselves like, oh geez, man, I got excuse my language. I got upset. I got angry. Man, I'm not doing it. I'm not, you know, I should be better. All those are judgments. And ultimately you want to get out of all of that. And I'm saying ultimately, I'm not saying I'm there. I mean, this is this is an ongoing journey, right? But it's how fast can you catch yourself? How fast can you look at it? And how fast can you move through it?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But to deny it and then get upset at ourselves, which I think a lot of us do, right? And even in the food world, right? A lot of us do, right? Ah, geez, I did this and I'm not, I could be better. That's not serving ourselves ultimately, right? Now, the other thing is we live in a world where, okay, there's a famous line in the Bhagavad Gita, which is Krishna's talking to Arjuna, and he goes, out of 100,000 of you, 10,000 are going to get the message, right? In other words, he's talking to Arjuna saying, I'm consciousness. If you can get this, you can understand this concept. You're going to be fine, right? You're going to be fine, but only 10,000 are going to get this message. And I've over time thought that percentage hasn't changed. 10,000 of people, no, sorry, 10% of the world is sitting in the light and the others aren't. So you got a lot of people who are going to bother your center. You got a lot of people who are going to knock you off your rocker, right? You're going to have a lot of people who are going to take you away from the midline. So it's about, authentically owning where you're at and going, hey, yeah, I'm really happy I'm on the raw vegan path, right? The high raw vegan path. Would I like to be completely raw? Yeah. I do find it a struggle at times because there's some stuff, cooked stuff I really enjoy, right? I'm also a guy who, Julie makes, vegan chocolate chip cookies, man. I'm down. Let's eat them. Now,
I'm down too.
there's two ways I can do with that. I can enjoy those for the moment, right? And this is a very tantric concept, by the way. Okay. The tantra concept is that you should see consciousness in everything you do because everything is consciousness. So in other words, where's the joy? Where's that life expression in everything you do? Whether it's you see a tree or you have a pint of Haagen-Dazs, vegan Haagen-Dazs, right? Can you enjoy that for the moment? For that moment in the now, be in that presence of that creator, that consciousness. That's great. That's what it's all about. But we don't do that because we keep trying to replicate it. Wow, I really love that vegan ice cream. So I'm going to have it every night now for the next 20 months because it really made me feel good. Maybe it didn't make you feel good, but it was that expression of connection at that moment. So can you be in that and let it go because it's gone. Like what we've just talked about, it's gone. It's history. It's finished.
Yep. That was the sensation that I was getting as you were speaking and sharing that, those teachings, is that when you said how quickly can you let it go, it was that piece mixed with the pre-knowledge of knowing that the vast majority of people, it's a messy world we live in. There's going to be times where people are trespassing against your free will, and which would serve to unsettle you and potentially knock you off your rocker, and perhaps that might even happen. So just knowing that ahead of time, not trying to be perfect, that's going to allow you to drop those judgments, be like, oh, that irked me a little bit, let me sit in that darkness. Why did it irk me a little bit? And then poof, it's gone, on to the next thing. And then iterating that over time, hence the practice piece of it, you're going to get more and more in touch with, I guess, that heart coherent energy, which is, like you said, the seat of consciousness. That's the allness, that's that unity center of our body, where we can just kind of like dissolve into what you were saying, that the tantric model is that everything is consciousness. And I think that's really beautiful.
Yeah, I think that what you've been talking about is really important. I think there's this. I was joking with a friend the other day, and we were talking about what I think. Say things like truth, honesty, integrity, right? And how they've now become these sort of mystical places of aspirations to be, right? And I'm going, no, this is just what you're supposed to be. It's not something, it's not something super special. You should be a truthful person. You should be honest. You should have integrity. This is just a morality of life, right? This is sort of a dharmic kind of place, right? But because people are so not in touch, they've taken these simple complex concepts and made them, they say, wow, like, and it's not,
Right.
right? And what happens is good manners, interaction with people, say hello, I mean, you know, I, I talk to everybody, right? So, I'll walk around the block and I'll go, hey, how are you doing? No, no. And funny enough, since, the last little while, people have really changed their behaviors, but that's not going to stop me, right? How many times have you walked up to somebody and said, you're looking great today. You look beautiful. 99.9% of the time, they're joyful. They're going, wow, thank you so much.
Yes.
And that's why we're here. We're here to connect. If we were here to run away and live in a cave, we'd all be living in a cave. That's the easy out. The hard out is what we're talking about, is can you have this path of ascension and growth and being in this place of being a loving, compassionate being, surrounded by billions of people, billions of events, billions of stuff going on in a world that we are bombarded with information faster than ever before, right? And to some extent unfairly so, because it's almost impossible to process, right? But can you be in this place and going, I'm a good person? And I think that's what comes down to. Maybe this is the simple part of this, Blake, is you got angry with the dog situation, whatever. But is there, and I'm not saying you, but I'm speaking metaphorically. Can we, in a situation that go like, okay, bug me, but I'm a good person. I know I'm a good person. I know I'm a good person. Yeah, there's sometimes I'm off my medium. I'm off my center, but I'm not there for a long period of time.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Now that really resonates, and thank you for saying that as well. I've been doing this work quite a lot.
Yeah, no, and it never ends. That's I think we think these things like maybe we think that these things like I'm going to do this and it's going to be over, right? And it isn't. It's like it's sort of Pandora's box. You've opened a box. There's no going back, right? So, but there is an incline. There is an ascension aspect to this. There is a thing, right? But I think you're just forever learning into a place where, can you get to wherever place that is where you choose not to be here anymore? Because I believe it's a choice. We can touch on longevity because that's, a path that I'm very much interested in. Can you get to
Yes.
this place living a long and healthy, vibrant life and choose, I'm done. I'm good.
Well, yeah, let's
I'm
touch upon that,
great.
Michael.
Yeah.
What's your take on longevity? It's like, you look easily 10 to 15 years younger than you are, and I'm not trying to like say that to fluff your ego.
Well,
A lot of us
thank you.
raw vegans and I've only been on this path a little while, but for, like I said, almost 2.5 decades, I was eating very clean, even though I would be having a little bit of animal products. So I think it's done me pretty well. I'm 39, so I'm holding in there pretty
That's
good. But
great. Yeah.
and you look amazing. And it's like, what would you take on longevity? You said it's something you're passionate about. I'd love to hear kind of like your philosophy on this longevity piece. I'm more on the yogic side and the TCM side of the natural way of doing it, and I'm not so much on like the chemicals and the pills and stuff like that. But I'm
Yeah. No, 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 no. No, I think if you, again, Hotema touches on this, right? There's a whole section of that book where he talks about how people have lived for, historically, if you go back historically, people were living 700, 1,000 years. There's still yogis out there, that can be found who, they found a guy a couple of years ago, they were doing excavation and they dug around and found this guy in Lotus, looked like he's dead and he wasn't, but he'd been there for like 400 years or whatever, right? And there are all these stories, and I've been blessed in my life where I've come across some of these guys, right? And it's kind of like, wow, right? We are magic. We truly are magic, right? And we have the ability, and you would know this now in terms of the journey you've been on. This structure, this thing that we are, is self-healing, right? We can heal ourselves, right? You know that, I know that. It's a journey of knowing that and how to implement that, right? I don't think it's about supplements or all of this stuff. Don't get me wrong. I think there's times and places for all sorts of things in that sense, but I think you can help heal yourself naturally. You touched upon your fasting scenario. Fasting, incredible, powerful tool for healing the body. And what's the learning of that? That's that the body can heal itself given a circumstance that 99.9% of the people on the planet think is wrong, right? You know, if you have a fever, embrace it. Sit in the fever. That's your body telling you you need to let it heal itself. But what do? We run to somebody. They give us a whole bunch of things, and that's not healing, right? So there's an understanding of this. But if we go back historically, pretty well in every path you go on, even Christianity, right, talks about Moses and these guys living till they were 700, 1,000 years old, and yada yada yada, right? So all of this, if you believe that to be true, I believe that to true. Believe that to be true. If you believe in Hotam's concept that, because really he's saying the same thing, right? As a breatharian, you have the ability to feed and heal yourself. Morris talks about this, right? It's about, and Morris is a big guy. His big passion is about connecting to that other place, right? It's not, his whole thing about healing and all the rest is amazing, but his passion is about, this connection to these other spheres, these other worlds, this whatever, right? And if you believe that to be true, and I do, then you go, wow, I have the power. Now, what can I do to make myself more powerful, or more powerful antenna, let's say, to do that? Well, I think part of that process is, what do you put in your body? How do you think? That's a big one, right? Because you can take all of these things in terms of natural health, right? And being a raw vegan or fruitarian or whatever it might be, and do that. But if you don't have the mental part, it doesn't matter what you're going to do. Doesn't matter, right? Because what you think is what you become, right? And that goes back to all the things we've been talking about. If you're beating yourself up all the time, right? Because, geez, I'm not perfect, or I'm not this or not that. I don't care if you eat 40 apples a day. It's not going to help, right? Now, there's a benefit to it. Don't get me wrong. So there's steps to it. What are you consuming? What are you thinking? How can you be in the moment, right? How can you sustain yourself naturally through sunlight, grounding, water you're going to consume, all of these kind of things, and what primarily you're not going to consume. Can you fast on a regular basis, right? You were just at the Texas Fruit Festival.
Yes, exactly.
Did you meet Eli? LA?
Yes, I met Eli. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So Eli lives in Toronto. He's been a fruitarian for like, what, 9, 10 years now, right? And he's in a great shape.
Yep.
The guy's in phenomenal shape, right?
Yeah.
A spiritual being, super dude, right? There's an example. But, again, most people probably think he's crazy. What do you mean eat fruit all day? And you're living in Canada. What does that mean?
Right.
It can be done, right? And so it depends on where you want to go with this personally. Like, you're in terrific shape. Obviously, you've taken care of yourself, throughout your life, right? And so it's what's the next step? Well, it's not the next step. Imagine you got this little magic bag on your side, and they're magic bags of tricks. What can you keep adding to this magic bag, right? That you can pull out when you need it, right? So
Yeah.
my mind's off center. I've got the monkey mind. Things are going, what trick in my bag have I developed that I can stop that? Breathwork, meditation, our brain coherence practice, right? Breath, settle down, cold plunging, hot cold therapy, whatever it might be, grounding. That's it. Those are all the little tricks you can go when that mind starts to go, right? Okay. Hey, I'm feeling lethargic. I'm not feeling good. Not feeling strong. I have no energy. Okay. Well, what is in my bag of tricks? This is what I've been eating. Is my lymphatic system healthy? Do I even know what my lymphatic system is, right? And what its function is? Am I eliminating properly? Do I sweat? Do I do all these things? Am I actually active? Am I doing something physical? Those are all the tricks, right? Now, in that bag of tricks are all the solutions to that too, right? The breath work, the harmony, the this, that, whatever it might be. And that's this journey is kind of, can I be on this quest of knowledge, and what do I do with it? Right? Because it could just be a whole bunch of stuff in your head, and who cares? I guess it goes back to, what can I put into action? And I'm using this metaphor of this little bag of tricks, right? That you just have. But that's it. You keep accumulating this stuff. And when can I pull it out? When I really need it. Okay, I got really pissed off. Frick, man, somebody just really took me off center. What can I do? First thing, and put your hand on your heart and breathe. Because fear does what? to your breathing.
Oh, it just seizes you right up.
Yeah, exactly. Seizes you up, becomes short, becomes, fragmented, right? All these things. It's funny. You see this in a yoga practice too, which I think is really hysterical, right? Is that, because really the practice is about moving with breath, not the other way around. It's not like, you know,
Yep,
and that's where it's gone off
exactly.
center. That's where it's gone off center. One of the ways it's gone off center, right? So what can you do? And you're in this place where you're developing all these things. Same with Ellie, Eli Martyr, Eli. You know, Eli went through. I'm assuming, all these different kind of stages to be in completely and powerful place that he's in, right? And most people go, I'm sure, he gets the same questions you do. What do you mean you eating grapes all day, right? You're beautiful physical specimen. You're a stuntman. You're active. You're doing all this stuff, right? Well, this is what I'm doing. This is what I move every day. I breathe every day. I meditate every day, right? I do some heart brain coherence every day. I'm grateful. I sit in some sort of gratitude practice every day, which is a big component of the heart brain coherence thing anyway, right?
Mm, mhm.
So all of this goes back to what we originally talked about. You're on this path and you're developing skills as you'll go along. Can you use those skills in a practical way as you move along to taking, another step forward? And there's going to be, that moved me back a couple of steps. Can I move ahead of more steps? And you are. And like, a year from now, you're going to go, I think I'm in a better place.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that that's really, man, that's gonna really resonate with a lot of the audience they're realizing that they're on this journey that might be a bigger thing than they thought in the beginning. And they thought in the beginning they would just stop eating animal products, and now they're just like doing meditations and they're realizing that they're getting off center. They're like, whoa, I'm like on this whole path towards enlightenment or towards awakening. And it's like you said a term earlier of Pandora's box, and that's kind of what it is. It's like with great power comes great responsibility type of thing. The more that you unleash more of this energy, and that your physical vessel becomes more of a clear channel for more consciousness to stream through, it starts to maybe shine light on areas where you could use a little bit more of that shadow work you were talking about to, smooth everything out. But yeah, this is really, it's enlightening to have this conversation.
I think the other thing is to be good to yourself in the sense of like, if you're looking, let's see, what are you, 39 years old now, you say?
Yes.
Okay. But guess what? You couldn't be where you are right now, right in this moment, if those 39 years hadn't happened. And some of them are filled with joy, some of them filled with shit, some of them filled with good times, bad times, tough times, whatever it might be. Your accumulation of all the things that have happened in your life. And at some point in time, you go, you know what? Okay, that made me the man I am today. One of the things in terms of gratitude practice is I thank myself for the man that I've become and the stuff I'm still learning.
That's powerful.
I'm not perfect, but I'm trying to move ahead. Not trying. Never say try. It means you're failing.
Right.
Yeah. It's I'm moving ahead. And that includes step backwards. It includes dark times, right? It includes times where you go, geez, wow. But fortunately, I think over time I've accumulated some knowledge to help me move through those things in a faster way. And I know I'm a good person. There's no doubt in my mind, right? And you can see it in others too, right? You can see it in your eyes. You can see there's goodness in people, man. They want to be good. We want to be good.
We do, and you're a yoga instructor, and I can just tell from the vibe and having this first conversation with you, hopefully first of many, and that you must have interfaced with thousands of students and held space for them and given them kind of the same feedback that you're giving me. And I'm just loving how this conversation is going, and appreciate you sharing this wisdom with me and sharing this guidance. That
If I can say something, if you don't, I'm sorry to interrupt, is that,
go ahead.
going to this concept that we're all consciousness, right? It's kind of a it's a simple kind of concept, but very complicated because clearly all spiritual practice being saying this, everybody hasn't got it, but we are. Okay. So, and there's subtleties to our language and how we describe things. So if we can sit in this place of going, we're all consciousness, and I'm going, well, that means Blake and I are the same. We're connected because we're part of the same consciousness. Now, this consciousness itself is experiencing itself differently in me and you because we're having different lifetime life experiences at the moment, right? But it's the same consciousness. So I find that very calming in a way. Okay. I'm surrounded by people who are all the same as me. And the next step is, can I go, if we can all accept that we're the same, right? We're all consciousness, man. That's it. Simple concept, but we can understand that. Then I have the opportunity to embrace our differences. Not that we're different, but that we have differences, right? You know, um, you're a gray looking guy who's taller than I am, I'm sure, and yada, yada, yada. I can embrace that instead of going, he's more muscular than I am and blah, 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 right? You know, or that person's just a beautiful person, right? I mean, and we have differences. People are shorter, taller, this, that. We're different colors. We're different this. We all have all sorts of differences, but it doesn't make us different.
Yeah. And what was coming to mind when you were saying that is like just go into nature. You go into nature and you hear the birds singing and just the pitch and just the timbre of their chirps and their calls to each other. It has like a happy sort of sound to it. And you look at the trees and the breeze is rustling the leaves and everything like that. That same conscious that is animating you, is animating me, is animating the birds, is animating the trees. And there is, I think, even when you look deeper into some of the esoteric knowledge as well, that there's a tilt towards the positive, and that there is a general sort of benevolence built into the fabric of reality. Um, Whereas,
Think nature is loving and benevolent, and we're part of it. So
absolutely,
we're loving and benevolent, right? And well, most of us have been brought up in a place where we take so many things for granted. Well, as we move along this path, we realize it's not for granted, right? It's there. And there's Greg Braden. I don't know if you've heard of Greg Braden. I mean, I love what he does. He's also a huge man into heart brain coherence. But in one of his books, he's talking, when I walk in the morning, I say, there's an Navajo prayer, and it goes, I walk in beauty, I walk in beauty, I walk in beauty. I walk in beauty before me. I walk in beauty beside me. I walk in beauty underneath me. I walk in beauty above me. I walk in beauty behind me. I walk in beauty. I walk in beauty. I walk in beauty. That's a very Taoist concept, right? We're part and parcel of this divine fabric. We're not separate from it. We are it.
and that's so I guess it's just having that reverence for our own lives. And this lifestyle has given me so much more of a respect, not just for the animals. I'm the same as you. I started along this path for health reasons, but then now the compassion for the animals is like you can't really stop it. It just starts to grow and grow and grow. And then just a reverence for each other and seeing that light in everybody else. Just doing some of that shadow work and doing some of that clearing out of kind of some habits or just some monkey mind chatter or whatever, and just how you navigate the world and how you deal with things. And like we talked about, recovering quicker when you see yourself being shaken off of center, and then just realizing that we're all the same. We're all the same fabric, and this is a huge part of the work that I think that, part of one of the reasons why I guess I called this podcast and this channel the raw food lifestyle is because it's more than just the raw food. It's a whole lifestyle behind it. You know what I found is, the raw food will clean out your vessel. But then, you were talking about Taoism, and that's actually something I wanted to ask you as well. And maybe we'll save that for the next one, because dude, I'm gonna have so many questions for you when I edit this back. I'm gonna write out a whole new list of questions, and we got enough for many more shows, God willing, and hopefully, you're down for that as well. But it's just incredible to when you start to unleash more chi flow within your body. And then it's like, what do you do with that? If you have that monkey mind going on, that extra energy, it's kind of like a double-edged sword. It might make your mind go even more crazy. So that puts even more of a responsibility on your meditation practice and everything like that. So I guess as we're coming to a close here on episode one of the Blake and Michael show, like as people are progressing along their journey and they're feeling more of that energy come up, do you have any advice for them?
Well, I want to touch on something because we haven't touched on it a lot, and maybe it'll be in another episode. But look, what you put on your body is incredibly important, right? Like it is, okay. And I don't think there's enough science out there at this point in time that if you're eating a plant-based diet, predominantly raw, predominantly fruit-based, it's a healthy place to be, and it is giving you a step up of one. You've got to clean out the domain, right? You have to clean out what you've put in historically, so you got to clean that out. Do, deworming, deparasiting, all of that kind of stuff. Get in a place you're going to find this chi, this energy, this life force is greater than it was before. That should be the first sort of recognition to go, wow, okay, I feel a lot better. I have a lot more energy. And we can dive into that in another one, but this is critically important. It is. I don't want to undermine that. It's completely important. But as I said earlier, you can do all those things, but if you don't have the mindset, if you don't have that mental peace of mind and connection to oneself, it's hard to make all of that work because you want to make it all work. You want to make it all work at the same time, right? And this is where the mindset, if you don't believe it, it's not going to happen. I don't care what you do, right? You could eat as healthy as you want. If you don't believe it, it's not going to work. And belief's a powerful thing, right? It is. It's a powerful thing. Stand in that belief, man. Stand in you're great, man. Blake, you're great. You're a great human being. You have unbelievable potential. You've done wonderful things. You're physically fit. You got a great smile, right? You're a good looking guy. You're a great being. We don't tell ourselves or others that enough, And a real simple thing with the heart brain thing is like, if you've got a question for yourself, put your hand to your heart and ask the question. And you're either going to find a contraction or an expansion. And if it's contraction, it's not meant for you. If there's an expansion, it is.
That's incredible. And Michael, again, I can't thank you enough. I thought we were going to talk about, like yoga and like what you eat in a
Well, we have
day.
that. We've actually had.
This has all been yoga, by the way.
It is. That's the irony of it. It is this, okay, so I find it so interesting. Yoga is defined, like the second sutra of the Yoga Sutra defines yoga. Yoga ha chitta vritti nirodha, which means yoga is the cessations, the fluctuations of your mind, right? It's about your mind. It's not about your body. All the physical aspect was there for you to be able to sit still, right?
Yeah.
Now, there is a physical benefit. Don't get me wrong, but it was there so you could be with yourself. And that's a scary place to be for most people. But you know what? It's a great place to be. I'm more entertaining than anything else.
Yeah.
I'm being facetious, but we have the ability to entertain ourselves, and I don't say this lightly, you're a good man, right? And we don't say this enough to the people around us because, it's always good to get a little feedback and, it's great that what you're doing, what you've put out there, what you are putting out there, right? You're sharing stuff. It's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, Michael, and I just have huge gratitude for those positive words today, and you've definitely moved me emotionally in this episode. And for everyone watching, this I hope this touched you the same way that it touched me. This lifestyle is so giving, and it really starts to shake off a lot of the junk that society, programming puts onto us. And then you're kind of left over with this feeling of gratitude and that heart coherent state that is just so profound. And the more that we each do our work kind of in this vein along with the raw foods, the mental work and the physical work, and it's a whole lifestyle. You've got to get all those pieces kind of moving in the same direction because as Michael stated earlier, you can't really separate one from the other. They're kind of all intertwined. Then our light is going to raise, but then we're raising the light of everybody else around us, and there's this interconnectedness, and that's going to move everything more towards that more idealistic future where it's perhaps like Hilton Hotima, would talk about in the origins of man being in kind of like this Edenic state, kind of like an idealistic sort of state where we're not using violence anymore in our food and with each other. And we're using our technology and our God-given capabilities as humans to build towards something that's maybe a little bit different than now, something that's a little bit more happy and light.
Well, this goes back to that premise of belief, right? I believe that we have the power to create the dimension we need to be in. Right? I do believe we have, and we have the collective power to do that. Greg Braden touches upon this. Funnily enough, the numbers to change the attitude around the world, like mentally in terms of positivity, takes a fraction of the people in that, but will affect the whole number. Like it's amazing how many. If you said if you did a worldwide meditation, let's say in the world you had 200, let's say 2,000 people, okay, joining in with a like-minded force, just a like-minded force that affects the rest of the planet in its entirety, right? It changes that frequency. It changes that dynamic. So we have the power. We have the power to do that, right? And what you're doing is part of that process. I'll leave you with this. We're a loving, compassionate, forgiving being that is filled with joy and light. Okay. We call it standing in grace. Grace is a very hard term to define, but boy, when it walks in the room, you know it.
I love that. And Michael, love you as well, brother. Thank you so much. And you guys, check back. I got more episodes already in the bank, ready to be posted for you guys. And we're going to line up another one with Michael here soon. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Until next time, we will talk soon. Peace.